Oh, can I come back to this casein thing?
Yeah, sure. You want to say more?
I mean, I was following the typical reductionist model of experimentation early in my career, obviously.
Right.
And we got the money on that basis. You study one thing at a time, and so
Right.
I wanted to do that, and I believed it, et cetera. But because the effect with casein was so dramatic,
Yeah.
and because it had so many different mechanisms working for it, and because it seemed to be only one member of a family of proteins, animal protein, from the other research that I was familiar with, then I was starting to range and thinking more broadly. You know, what about other proteins? What about this? What about that? What
Right.
about other diseases?
Right.
So eventually, I worked from a reductionist model to a holistic model, where the evidence became even more powerful, more impressive.
So in your more recent book, Whole, you
That's
try
what
to
it's
tell
about.
that story. I see.
So I start here, and you know that's what I did. And there's some critics want to go back. Oh, you did that. You know, what are you talking about? You know, well, of course I did that. So the way I look at it, I'm not against reductive research. You got the whole, and then you got all the details, if you will. The details make the whole.
Sure.
I mean, so we can't have a whole. To know something about the details enriches our understanding of the whole.
Sure, that makes sense.
That's all it is. We don't take it over here and then sell it for something.
But you do think that by starting off with casein and telling a story about how it has certain effects, and then extrapolating to animal proteins as a whole, there is something that underwrites that inference or that extrapolation.
It has to do with the composition of the amino acids.
Okay.
That's what animal proteins tend to have, an amino acid profile, which is really what matters.
Okay.
It determines its activity. Animal proteins tend to have an amino acid profile very similar to our proteins. We're animals too. Plant proteins, they don't have that same profile. There's usually one or two amino acids that are on the low side. And so they don't promote as well because one limiting amino acid or two, if you will, kind of slows things down. And then you stop and think about it. Gosh, that's the way nature did it.
I see.
The fastest rate of growth for us is not good
Right.
of our children because you have early age of menarche in women and then higher estrogen levels and higher breast cancer rates and uterine cancer.
Do you worry at all that when we feed rats or rodents huge quantities of pretty much any nutrient and start with some aflatoxin to turn the cancer on, that we're probably going to see some strange results that might not bear on a much more moderate animal-based diet?
No, we did a study
Okay.
from the lowest level of aflatoxin to the highest level.
Yeah.
We looked at the relationship. And basically, it's a straight line linear relationship. We published that too. And so we just had enough in there that, you know, guaranteed that there was a certain amount of mutation so we could do our study in a reasonable period of time.
Right. No, but I'm talking about the casein. So you gave them a lot of casein, much more than they
No.
get in any normal
didn't.
dairy. No?
didn't do that.
Okay.
You're right in talking about other carcinogens. That's the way they do the research.
Okay.
But in our case, we went from 4%, which is too low, what we normally have, up to 20%, which a lot of people have.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So we work directly in the range that we use.
Okay. I was under the impression that you were really
not-
pushing the casein as hard as you could. Okay, interesting.
In fact, the Dietary Guideline Committee, which is skewed toward the animal industry,
Yeah.
actually said in 2002 in a report we could go as high as 35%. We only went up to 20.
That's interesting.
So, you know, we're entirely within the range of human experience.
Is there any worry that there was something else going on in China in the 70s or whenever the data was collected that might also be explaining some of the phenomena?
No, because we had too much data,
Okay.
too many ways of looking at it. And for example, we measured pesticide exposure for 10 different pesticides, for example. We looked at other characteristics in the blood. We collected blood samples.
Okay.
We measured all kinds of things from hormones to this, that, and everything else.
What about low-calorie intake generally?
No, that's not a problem. In all the years that we did the rat studies, for example, it turns out the animals that got no cancer,
Yeah.
ate the most calories. Most.
As long as they're not animal proteins.
No, most calories.
Okay,
Calories,
right.
yeah. So it was not very much higher, but certainly the effect that we got from the low protein diets, this beneficial effect,
Yeah.
it did not come from the fact that these animals were consuming less calories. That's my point.
Okay, let me just restate that so that I feel like I got it. So you're claiming somebody might say in response to some of your data, well, these Chinese villagers were, it was after the famines, they were probably not eating much food at all. There's some thought that low-calorie diets generally tend to reduce diseases like the diseases of affluence that you're talking about. So maybe it was the low-calorie aspect of their diet and not the no animal protein.
It's exactly the opposite. They consume more calories per unit body weight than we do.
Really?
30%, a lot more. They work hard, so they consume more calories because of their workload.
Okay.
But these were reasonably healthy people.
And they're
There was
eating
nothing to
rice,
do with
vegetables.
calorie deficiency,
Okay.
nothing.